Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. I'm your host, Devon Decker, and joining me, my host companion, Sejohn Sarowick. Sejohn?
Hey everybody, what's going on this week?
Well, I would like to start off by saying the headwear that I'm wearing for the recording of this episode is sponsored in part by Sejohn's Choice. That's not some weird sequel to Angela's Ashes. Just to make sure. I mean, I know that we live in 2021 and that there was Nazi symbols and paraphernalia prominently on display at the Conservative Political Action Conference over the weekend, but I don't think we're at sequel to Angela's Ashes yet. That being said, as insane as that, everything that just came out of my mouth was and is, Sejohn's Choice would be like one of my decisions for like frontrunner title of a sequel to Angela's Ashes. Talk. Are you really just going to let me keep digging with this?
I'm just trying to figure out, I'm sorry, I am lost trying to determine whether or not you do or do not remember that Sophie's Choice would have been the thing to talk about.
Sophie's Choice is what it was supposed to be. But you know what I had to read senior year of high school, and I didn't, was Angela's Ashes.
Yeah, which is like an irony. What are you doing?
Yeah, no, Sophie's Choice is what I was going for.
Yeah, okay.
Woo!
I just also did not want to speak out of turn if you had some deep-seated, like, feelings about Angela's Ashes, because, man, I mean, like, the troubles, man, I get it. Like,
yeah, no, I mean, the deep-seated issues that I have with Angela's Ashes, and this is not going to become another Devon goes through his high school experiences with the listener episode, but by the time I got to 12th grade, the litany of books that were just depressing that they had us read, it had gotten too far. And like I went into my first day of class with ironically, if you're listening, right, let's throw some continuity in there. The teacher that I did the quote about Superman in front of in my 10th grade year, she was my 12th grade English teacher. And it was no secret that this woman had high disdain for me after the Superman incident in the band room, because a senior on the newspaper for the high school wanted to do an expose on Devon Decker, like up-and-coming students to watch my sophomore year. Like, well, you know, and that's an interesting thing, but like I would go on to be the homecoming king. So, like, if that student had been allowed to write that, like, in-depth look at Devon Decker, that might not have happened. Let's just be honest, right? She would have found the skeletons in my closet. The type of skeletons that get a person disqualified from homecoming king, but probably not from president of the United States. But that teacher had such disdain for me that she's like, I will never let anything about Devon Decker appear in the high school newspaper. That was the response given to or at least that's what I was told by the student who wanted to profile me for the school paper, which I can't remember the name of right now, and that's fine.
It's always a healthy sign of a good teacher, though,
right?
When they just hate a student so much that they refuse to acknowledge their existence. But yeah.
Yeah. So then she's my English teacher, and I'm already, like, rip-roaring to go, because in 11th grade, next door to the room that I was going to be learning from in 12th grade, I did a whole monologue about being sick and tired of these books that represent only one single thing. We're not getting the panopticon of what literature represents. You are pretty much giving us the African American experience in America. And that's fine. And it was terrible. And it's still something that is awful in 2021. But like the fact that that's every single book that we read, like that's just as dangerous to only show one specific type of narrative to people if you want to discuss how that forms their vision of the world. And that's basically what I said is I'm like, I can't read another book like this, and I'm not going to. And I think everybody in this room should join me, because we need to experience the variety of literature.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, man, like name a classic novel that is part of like the canon that does not revolve around something depressing.
But I mean, that's a good point. But it being depressing is one thing. It being like depression, it was just the fact that by the time I got to senior year, I'm done with depressing books. And also, it was my summer reading. It was like over the summer you need to read Angela's Ashes and The Handmaid's Tale. I keep wanting to say Handmaid's Tale, but it's Handmaid's Tale, right?
Handmaid's Tale, yes,
yeah.
yes.
Which would make sense now because you want to know what's not going to happen in the Hulu adaptation. Because I think they've already moved away from the book, right? They just use it as like a leaping off point for that series. I don't know. I never read that book either. So
it's one of those first season situations where essentially like they kind of got through the majority of the meat of that story real quick.
And that's okay. Like that's the type of, I like shows like that where then you get to explore it. I mean, I don't like Handmaid's Tale, but that's because I have all these memories tied up to like, I don't want to read another one of these type of stories. Like, please vary it up. And then I will say, like, senior year, it was varied up. I loved every single book that we read senior year. I loved them a little too much to the fact that during discussions on Brave New World, I was just sent out of the classroom. And then later I would be told by this teacher, I have to send you out of the classroom because you're working on a different level with this book than every other student, and it's becoming a hindrance to teach it to them, and they're the ones who need to learn it. Because I'm reading Brave New World and like, oh, damn, look at this symbolism. And she's like, that's a little too advanced for your 12th grade buddies. And I'm like, I don't know how that's my fault. I also don't like that, like, you send me to the principal's office so I get in trouble for being smart. I need to stop this, Sejohn. I don't know where any of this came from.
I don't know either. You just kind of kept going.
It's true. So
12th grade for me was Our Town. Like that's like the big thing that we think we read that year.
That's fun.
We read Caesar as well, like Julius Caesar as well. So like I think it was a play section that we were probably in.
I think we read Macbeth. Oh, is it okay if I say Macbeth? Does that offend?
Yeah, we're not a theater
We're not
space.
a theater, right? And even
Just
then,
consider the fact that all the world's a stage.
Oh,
he kind of wrote himself into a corner on that one, didn't he?
I think that was the point. That was his whole thing. That's Shakespeare's legacy, and the title of our episode is the fact that I'm gonna convince everybody the whole world's a stage, and then like I'm gonna pick one of my play titles out of a hat at random and say that saying that is superstitious, and see how deeply that can like pervade the cultural consciousness. And meanwhile, Anna Karenina, his wife, that's not her name. Anna Kendrick, was that his wife?
Yep, his wife, Anna Kendrick, yep.
It's Anne Hathaway was her name. So like it's not too far off that I'd think of an actress who's famous now. But yeah, that's weird, right? Do you think Anne Hathaway's real name is Anne Hathaway, or she named herself after Shakespeare's wife?
I would have to say that it's her real name and that her parents named her after Shakespeare's wife. I think that it's
so.
A little bit of
that speaks to what's in a name, Willie Shakes. But I think that's it. And I bet Shakespeare's ghost, wherever he is, my guess is hell. If we had to ascribe to one of the belief systems of where you go after you die, I would think that William Shakespeare went to hell. And that's cool. He's probably keeping a table like held for us when we get down there.
Man, that's if you believe that he was one person.
Oh, that's true. But then I think collectively the writers of Shakespeare, like the Broken Lizard troupe Shakespeare, they probably all went to hell. I have to imagine.
I mean,
based on the theme, they kill children who fall in love, Sejohn.
Let's be honest. If there's a hell, we're all going to it.
Yeah, exactly. If there's a hell, we're there. Ba-da-da, the big reveal. I don't know what I'm doing about this. Oh, I was going to talk about, like many episodes. Oh, my headwear. That's how this started. My headwear is brought to you by Sejohn's Choice, the only coffee that wakes me up in the morning. And that's because I asked Sejohn what headwear I should wear. And he told me a headband. And I hate it. I hate this headband. I feel like it's crushing my brain. And maybe that's probably why, like, I'm a soft serve dispenser of just random information.
Let's be clear. I did not tell you. You did not ask, and I did not tell you to wear that for recording.
Well, I thought I wanted to pay it tribute, and
I appreciate
it's
that,
not.
but let's not act like you were like 2 minutes before the show. Like, what should I put on? Like, that's not what happened. Two
No,
days ago, you were like, I have to do a competition. What should I wear? And my first thought was sweatbands.
wait, and I got sweatbands for my arms. I've never felt more punk rock. I've never owned sweatbands before. Oh my god! And you could just keep your guitar picks under there. Uh,
All right, calm down, Scott Pilgrim.
Yep, thank you. I'm glad that it all worked out. But yeah, so I've taken it off now because I think that's where just all the memories just came shooting out my mouth because pressure was being applied to my brain in a way.
I'm glad that we found the source and we could turn it off for this week's episode.
Yeah. But the other thing is, like I often do before episodes of the Save Report, I listen to Human Nature. I haven't done this in a long time, but I have a karaoke track of Human Nature from an old project that I worked on. And if I'm here in the chair before Sejohn is ready, I tend to go through my old karaoke files just to like wake myself up. And I gotta tell you, listening to Human Nature, March 1st, 2021, we probably should have seen it coming. Probably should have seen it coming.
Oh man, I gotta say, like that. Is that your pump up music?
No, that's not. No, my pump up music is a variety. I have a list of songs that I have cultivated. Of I have to learn this if I'm ever out at karaoke. I mean, like, and this goes long before now. And the reason why I started this list is I used to go yearly to a friend's karaoke birthday party. This is a tradition that began in, I'm going to say conservatively, 2007. This started. And I would go to the karaoke birthday party. And these are guys that I had fallen out of touch with. They're the guys that I wrote Slither with. And, you know, just through the nature of living, we had fallen apart. Through stuff like I was going to college, they were working to make this movie, so like we just lost touch with each other because I didn't have the time dedicated to make a film, as I was in college, and
then we made a bunch of films in college.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't have the time to make a feature length film.
Yeah,
I could make like a 10-minute little jaunt on the weekend, but. And it was also that
a 7.5-hour documentary about driving to New Jersey. But anyway, yeah.
Well, I mean, well, whatever happened with that film, Sejohn?
I don't know, Devon. We get the footage was handed to you, and then it was mysteriously lost.
Oh, I mean, I have the tapes. The problem is that camera that we used to film Devon and Sejohn Go to New Jersey, it was busted. It was like a rental from URI, and the sound sync was off, like
miserable
on a deep level.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
we got yelled at by that Chinese food owner.
That Chinese food owner, that's my favorite part. Why are you recording? No, we're not. We just have a camera in the car. We are very lost.
Help us, please.
We are at a Chinese food restaurant on a lake asking, how do we get to where we're supposed to go?
Man.
That's a crazy. There's a story for a very special episode someday. Is the behind the curtain Devon and Sejohn Go. But yeah, so I had fallen out of touch with them, and I was invited to their birthday party, and it was a karaoke birthday party, and I in college fell in love with a song by Rick Astley that the world knows as the Rickroll song. But I had grown up with Never Gonna Give You Up. It was a song that I like loved from my childhood because I owned that album on like cassette. And I would listen to it when we drove from our home in Templeton, Massachusetts to visit my grandmother in Rhode Island. So like, I don't know just Never Gonna Give You Up. I got stuff like It Would Take a Strong Man, Together Forever. I have all these stuff. So I go to this karaoke party, and my intent is like, I say hi, I get a drink, I sing one song, I'm gone, right? That's the plan. That is what I have decided I'm going to do. Mm-hmm. So I get there and I'm like, I don't know what to sing. I'll just sing this Rick Astley song, whatever. this is before Rickrolls existed, which is this whole affair. That group of people feel I invented the Rickroll. Like, that's the thing that came up every time I went to the karaoke birthday party every year going forward was, it's Devon Decker. He invented the Rickroll. And I'm like, okay.
You're at least the basis for Trollface. I know that much.
That's mean. But probably true. But yes, so I sing that Never Gonna Give You Up, Never Gonna Give You Up, just in case you don't know it by that name. Hopefully you understand the song now, listener, because I have to remember there's a listener here, hopefully, right? There's a third party in this exchange.
Sometimes I have to wonder. But yeah.
So I sing that, and they lose their shit, and that night turns into... I didn't get home until like 6 a.m. the next morning. Like, because we went from the karaoke bar to an after party, and I get home at 6 a.m. And then like 2 days later, I have to go to this house that I found, middle of the night. I didn't really know the people because I had left work stuff there. So yeah, it was an adventure. It was a whole adventure. But then every year going forward, I would go to this karaoke birthday party, and invariably, because it's a birthday party, the birthday boy would want me to perform Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley. So...
Gotta please the birthday boy.
You gotta, and I suddenly felt for, like, Journey with Don't Stop Believing. Or, Kansas with Carry On My Wayward Son. Like, I understood it, right? Like, all they want to hear is your classics, but you have a panopticon. That's my word of the day, I guess.
I also don't think you're using it exactly right.
I'm totally not. But you have, I have a litany of songs that I can sing. So what I decided, right, was because I knew that I was always going to have to do Never Gonna Give You Up at this karaoke birthday party, I began to cultivate a list of songs from just strangers, really, that they would want me to perform. So I've like steadily learned songs in secret for if I'm ever out at karaoke and like I don't know what to sing, I just bring up this list of songs and do a regular random song off it. I might have touched on this before with that song like You Can't Find Love in the Club. Because that's on that list.
Eddie Murphy?
No, you can't find love in the club, but I want to tell them they're wrong. Now, New Flame is the name of that song.
But who is... No, it's not Eddie Murphy. I'm thinking of No Sex in the Champagne Room from Chris
That's
Rock.
Chris Rock, yeah. I mean, and a lot of the times, like, this list, when it started out, like, just talking to strangers, I would be at karaoke, and these people, like, just blasted out of their mind. Like too drunk to stand, let alone perform, would do these songs, and I'd be like, oh, maybe this song would be interesting to do by somebody who's not 5 sheets to the wind. So like that's also how that list started. So I have a little folder on the computer of karaoke versions of songs, and if I'm waiting for you, I just tend to throw one on and see if I can perform it karaoke styles. Because I have a microphone.
Yeah, for the record, my pump-up song is The Rose by Bette Midler.
That's fine. And you know what? I'm adding that to the list. I'll learn The Rose by Bette Midler if I'm ever at karaoke. Because you know what everybody wants to hear? They want to hear a guy with my body type and build and, religion do The Rose at karaoke. It'll be just as good as when I sang Two Become One by the Spice Girls.
Oh, man.
That was a good night. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, Sejohn, you should talk.
Yeah, man. I don't even know where to go because you didn't even talk about what you did this week.
I know I didn't. I just kind of talked.
You just talked about what you did for the last 2 minutes.
And I stretched it into 20. So good. No, but if you talk about what you did last week, I can probably reach into my things through it as well. I mean, because what I did last week is very singular paced and probably a good place to end this.
Oh, man. So, Jesus, man, I don't know. This last week has been a little up and down in terms of us trying and doing some things. We dipped into some online Super Mario, and we should talk about that for the
Oh,
1 second it deserves.
oh, we're talking about
Um,
us too. Okay, I thought you were
yeah.
going to talk about things that you had done over the last week. A
I-
singular, Sejohn.
but that was really, but like
But yeah, we
so
should
that was
definitely talk
a lot
about.
of what the last week has been is just kind of moving forward with a lot of the stuff that I've been doing as far as like prep work for Justice League, and then dipping in and out of my Stardew farm with my new 1.5, and then on top of that, yeah, we tried out some Super Mario Online because this is like the first time ever that you've been able to play a Super Mario World game online with two people, at least Nintendo sanctioned, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any non-Nintendo sanctioned ones, and
Oh,
really everything in the online section. Oh, I guess that weird endless Mario game that was like Super Mario 35, but kind of worse.
but there was also there's tons of multiplayer mods for emulated games and stuff like that. So you could definitely find people that were doing multiplayer Mario long before like Nintendo actually got in on it, because that's what Nintendo does is they walk into a fad 10 years too late and then act like they don't know how to do anything with it.
Well, the funny
Which
thing
was
is that 5 years before they walk into that fad, they've ceased and desisted the people who are currently making
right,
that fad
right.
work.
They
The
legally
reason
stop
why it's a
everybody else from
fad.
doing it.
And they say, no, you don't get to do that. And then they wait 5 years so that people will forget that it ever existed and then be like, look what we're bringing you. We're Nintendo. We love you. Here's Mr. Nintendo
Here's
bringing you
Mr.
Mario Online.
And then Mr. Nintendo walks in and is just like, "This is Mario Online, just like you wanted." Mr. Nintendo, this doesn't work very well. This is what you asked for. What do you want from me? He like flips the table up and walks out. He's just like, "You people are never pleased."
Yeah, you people are never pleased. And then also as he's walking out, he goes, and it costs $60 to play. Oh, it was free before. $60. Don't make me raise it to 70 like my brother's PlayStation and Xbox did. Oh man, sorry.
No,
It's just all
uh,
true. And also, I'm kind of salty over the whole affair. If I have to
yeah.
be honest about it.
Yeah, so if you haven't gathered by this point, Dev and I jumped in. I mean, it might as well have been, but we jumped into some online Super Mario 3D Worlds because we wanted to check it out. It seemed like it was something that would be really fun if it worked, and it doesn't. So I don't know if that's a surprise to anybody. I will say this, like there's probably an ideal use case in which it is a great time. We it just wasn't ours.
Well,
Like, you know, I know my internet is not top of the line. I know that my Switch is a few rooms away from my router, things like that. Like maybe there's ways we could have improved it. But if you're talking about it in those terms, they've done something wrong.
okay. While I'm talking, I'm going to talk right now, as I often do. Can you look up the cost of the Ethernet adapter for the Nintendo Switch? Because
Ooh,
I have
yeah.
an idea in my head, but I'd like to have the direct facts on how
Yeah,
much
yeah,
it
yeah.
costs. Because, like, ideal use scenario, I have recently, during the whole quarantine thing, which I can't believe it's almost been a year in quarantine. Like, it's March again, but it kind of always has been. Uh, I
$29.99,
Yeah,
by the way, for
$29.99.
the
So it's $30.
that's the Nintendo labeled one. There
Yeah.
are other ones that are cheaper or whatever, but the Nintendo labeled one is $29.99.
Right. So $30, so half the cost of a game. And I have learned the virtue of wired internet connections. I had a theory years ago, and I talked to some tech friends, and they told me, no, that won't work. Verizon would never let you do that. But then in quarantine, with nothing else to do, I started banging rocks together until I got wired internet for pretty much everything in the house. Uh,
Jeff discovered fire one day and fire cable the next.
Yeah. And then, but the only things in my home, the only game systems in my home that are currently not wired are the switches. Everything else has a dedicated Ethernet connection to the pool of internet that Verizon provides to us each month. And I have to imagine that if you're a wired connection, then it might run well, but The
Well is not
Switch.
the right word.
Yeah, what
It might run. Let's put it that way, which would be a step better than what we had.
the grossest thing about it is we're so happy. We're so excited to log into this. We each have our Switches. We're each playing docked as well, right? Like I imagine
Yes.
you were docked because you complained about your controller at one point,
Yes.
like not being sure which button to hit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so we were both docked. So the game itself was running in the better way that it can, because undocked, most Switch games don't run optimum in undocked mode. And I could totally understand if we're playing undocked, we having these issues. But
Right.
docked and sitting at like TVs, and I'm playing fine. Like we're both dinking around in Super Mario 3D World before we're like, hey, let's get in on this together. And it felt like a butter filter had been put over the game.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, anybody that has played any of the online for Super Mario Maker will know exactly what we're talking about. It is like pushing your character through molasses, and every jump, it almost feels like cheating in some weird moments, because like you're getting frame by frame of the jump, which means that it was a lot easier to like aim where we were going to land, but also then like you'd land and take 3 steps. It was very bizarre. So butter is really good because it was really hard to get through, but yet we were slipping everywhere.
yeah, it was. Yeah, like my initial thought, this is butter. I feel like I'm walking through, but wading through butter. And I think the important thing to note is we played 2 levels, and neither one of the levels were particularly intensive levels.
No.
The first level that we played was, I think you had just gotten to Flower World, right, in your
Right.
game. So was the Flower World version of hit all the question marks and turn them into exclamation points in order to move forward, which is a level 2 like basic level that they then ramp up in Flower
Yeah,
World.
it's a remix. Once you get into Flower World and Mushroom World and stuff like that, it's remixes of older levels a lot of the time. Yeah.
It's comet versions of the
Right.
levels. That's what it feels like. So what was that one? It's not like we did like a beep block level. Like the hardest level, even local multiplayer, was the beep block levels, where like it's beep 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 and we switch from blue blocks to red blocks.
Yeah.
Like just the fact that it's like that's intensive. That really works the system. We weren't doing levels like that. We were doing levels like you have a square, touch every part of the ground once to move forward.
Or like the second level that we did was straight up the second level of the game, right? Like we went back to the first world so that we could do a little bit of life farming, right? And we were just like, let's go into just 1-2, because we know that there's a couple places there where we can guarantee a good number of lives, and it's not gonna push us. Right now this thing's not running great, and we got into that, and even that was miserable.
Yeah, like, and that's what was it. Like when the second level feels like that, what we should have done, honestly, for science, and it's disappointing we didn't. We should have done World 1-1, because I have this weird feeling that World 1-1 might have run like a dream to like trick you.
Yeah, that like Nintendo put all of their work into like making sure this one level works okay, but everything else is just shit.
Yeah.
Man. I mean, like, I'd be willing to try it again. Maybe if we could do some stuff, like if one or both of us were able to get wired switches together or something like that. And because the concept is such a good idea. Online Mario that works would be so much fun, because this is the kind of thing where, in a lot of the same ways, it would scratch like the same itch that the Wii used to and no longer does, like 15 years out, because like that's been done. But that idea that it would bring people in my life back into gaming in a way that they've never really been before. So like the Wii was awesome because like my mom got in on it. Hell, my grandmother at the senior center was using a Wii for like exercise and stuff, like, right? Like people in my life were suddenly talking about video games with me that had never done that before. And now if the Switch could figure out a great way to do online, like, but nostalgic games like 3D World, which is just super, it's an extension of that same Super Mario stuff that my family used to play when we were younger. Like, do you know how awesome it would be to do online long distance gaming with my mom, with my cousin, with these people in my life that, like, I wouldn't push them to do it for like Doom or any shit like that. But for Mario, I'd be like, you guys should get it. Like, especially because Zach is living with my parents right now, right? I could be like, put mom on. Like, let's see what mom can do. Like, that would be awesome. And it would bring back these nostalgic feelings while also giving me new experiences with games in a way that, like I said, I haven't felt since the Wii came out. And like that is where they stand to be. So I am all for it if it works. The problem is like I was saying, like Nintendo can't seem to get on the freaking ball with this online stuff in any way. The closest they seem to have gotten is Mario 35, and all they did with that was talk about how they were gonna kill it in the next couple of weeks, and like,
yeah, right. Because we also got into a Super Mario 35 match together. We're gonna go back to 3D World, but like you were out before me, and then you got to spectate my game. Was there any sort of lag watching me play that game? Like, or did it moved seemingly in real time, right?
Yeah. I mean, like it was really nice. Yeah.
Like, and that's why I think I tricked myself, because I've been playing so much Super Mario 35 that I think I tricked myself into thinking, oh, this is going to be a great experience, Super Mario 3D World Online. Because why wouldn't it be? This is 35 Switches connecting together and sharing information in, like, a pretty intense way. Like, infrastructure-wise, what I imagine needs to be available to make a game of Super Mario 35, it's a lot of things coming together. And I think one of the reasons why they want to kill it, assuming they do kill it, and I feel like they're going to, I've read too many articles with people like, there's just no longevity here. And I'm like, shut up, I do this every day, and it makes me feel so good. Because it's exactly what you just described, new experiences with an old toy.
Yeah.
And so it scratches that. But I feel like the reason they're killing it is because it's just, like, resource intensive on their end. Like, we have to have a server at Nintendo dedicated for this game. And that one server is able to do it, but it can't be like we do internet for any other game where, like, it's P2P. It's switches connecting to switches. We don't need a server for them to join in on. And also,
I mean, in terms of this specific idea of like server space and the idea of maintaining that online community long term, like Nintendo is just not set up for it. Like, obviously, I can't speak to what they actually have their hands in and stuff like that, but compared to like a PlayStation or Xbox, where you know that they've had online gaming like this for decades at this point, so you know the server farms that must exist for them are huge, right? But Nintendo just doesn't have that. They just don't have that infrastructure.
Right, and they don't have any interest in building that infrastructure, by all accounts. I think what also tricked me is that Nintendo has dipped a toe into cloud-based gaming with things like Hitman 3 and Control. So it felt like maybe they're finally taking that leap into it. And that's why I was expecting Super Mario 3D World to be a pretty solid experience. And it was a solid experience, just not the way I meant it. Literally, not figuratively.
Yeah, because it's a solid brick is all it was.
I had to walk through walls. I was Shadowcat that day. But also, there's a real limitation with the fact that it's online being grafted onto an existing game. And as much as Super Mario 3D World has clearly been rebuilt and remastered in some pretty impressive ways for the Nintendo Switch, like, it looks absolutely gorgeous. It did not look this good on the Wii U. So that's just a fact. Like, the water effects are just, oh my god.
There's some lighting stuff that I was really blown away by. I actually had to like readjust like my settings for the Switch because because it uses a palette of colors that my TV was not set up to care about for the Switch.
Yeah, it's impressive. They do a really nice job with the game. But then they take this existing game and they graft on online, and it feels like it's like not the last thing they considered, but, you know, probably the last bullet point on the outline, or just of what they want to do with this game. And my biggest complaint about it is when you are playing online, we're in your world, right? So you've done local, right? You've done local co-op in Super Mario 3D World. So there's that issue where you're kind of pulled along to whoever's the furthest. Like if you start to move too far ahead, rather than you're dead, you're put in a bubble and you're brought to them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And that always defaults to whoever player 1 is. Like if there's a difference between the two, player 1 is generally the default person who you'll be brought to.
Yeah, there's a weird algorithm to it, and that's just the point, right? Is it's not clear, because like sometimes it'll be whoever's furthest ahead, sometimes it'll just be straight up player 1, sometimes it'll be whoever's like going for like a secret while the other person's not. Like it'll decide to snap to one person or the other, and it's never clear who it's going to follow.
Right. But if I'm playing an online game, right, I would really like it if I could be doing one thing and you could be doing another thing within the confines of that level. Because we each have our own screen.
Yeah. I don't think that the games are built to handle that.
Yeah.
So like this speaks to you saying like it's grafted onto a game that wasn't ready for it. Because like I don't think 3D World would be able to figure out how to have essentially what you would need is the whole world would need to exist at once, as opposed to these like 3 or 4 screens of this world that have to exist for right now, as far as like processing power and stuff goes, right? So like it's the same thing like when we used to talk about moving into a 3D space. It was no longer you had to just figure out what the front of this thing looked like. You had to figure out what it looked like from all angles, because a character could be looking at it at any point. And so like that fucked with a lot of game design and a lot of development and a lot of space issues and stuff like that. And it's that same idea where Mario 3D World was built to consider 4 frames, right? Like the frame you were just on, the frame that you're currently in, and then the next 2 ahead, because there might be something coming your way. And like with that in mind, they can't compensate for somebody that might fall back 10 screens or move ahead 10 screens. I just don't think the game can handle that.
Right. And I agree. But if they were going to create a fully online, like, capable version of a 3D Mario game, that's something that I would want.
Yeah.
I would like it so if we're online, we can be in the same world existing, like an open world game. Like, we played Destiny yesterday as well on the Stadia, because I want to get my Stadia miles in before they're useless. Sorry, that sounded mean, but it's true.
I don't see them becoming useless as soon as you seem to think.
Right, exactly. But I want to take advantage of it. I love the controller. I put the controller in my hands yesterday, and it just like it was like butter again, but in a good way. And like the fact that we were on 2 separate sides of that planet, and that is because that game is dedicated, built, has these 3D environments on a server, and we're just connecting to that server.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think a really good 3D Mario with a GTA online feel to it, where there is this entire city and we are both in it, but one of us could be in a completely different part of it than the other and doing something that doesn't affect like I think that would be awesome. I mean what we're talking about is what has to be the next phase of something like Bowser's Fury, right? Can you imagine that world where if like you and Bowser Jr. were off on one side and like Luigi and Kamek me were on the other or something, you know what I mean? Like that there's a game that I can definitely see Nintendo getting to. It's just the deal is it's going to be 10 years from now and we're going to be we're all going to be talking about why they aren't doing VR. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, why am I going to use a controller to play this Mario game?
Why aren't we playing this one with our tongue like Xbox?
Oh, you made that dirty. If you had said PlayStation, it's less dirty than when you say Xbox.
Oh,
Play
man.
the Xbox with your tongue. That's right. I went there, big boy. All right. So there's some gaming from us. Stadia Destiny was great. If you're looking for a way to like get Destiny sort of on the cheap, go the Stadia route. I want to like just sing the praises of it The only disappointing part about playing Destiny yesterday was just how quickly world events would restart.
Yeah.
Because that walker, I'd kill a walker and there'd be another walker there. And I'm like, I can't just walk away from a walker. I've said walk too many times.
Part of the issue with that, it may be, is that we were, I mean, early games, not even fair. Like, we were at the beginning of the game, right? And so there's only like 3 or 4 people at a time there helping you fight that walker. In later, if it's like it used to be, in later areas of the game, you end up with like 30 people attacking that walker. It goes down quick. You get really good gear because of how fast it goes down. Also, it seems like there's more time between when the next time it spawns, because it wasn't around for so long last time, so there's a longer time between spawn points.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. That makes sense.
Like, part of it is that, but part of it is that they've revamped that game to be so much more of a go experience. Like, story in that game was never strong. It is all but disappeared at this point.
I mean, yeah.
Somebody out there is like, I read my Bungie cards all the time, but it's not worth it. Like, that game is just all about like shoot, loot, go. Yeah.
If I have to read cards to get the full story, is Bazooka Joe. Or nothing. Because Bazooka Joe, I get some gum with my exploits. I love Bazooka Joe. Bazooka Joe.
Was Bazooka Joe in Archieverse, or like,
nope, he's his own universe.
Did Bazooka Gum exist in Archie universe? I feel like Jughead and Bazooka Joe met at some point in my brain, and I can't figure out why.
If Jughead and Bazooka Joe met, I'm pissed. First of all, if it happened because Archie has met literally everybody. We covered that in our episode. There is no more crossover heavy comic universe than the Archieverse.
Right.
And actually, speaking to a time capsule we're going to be recording sometime in the near future, Funky Winkerbean. Do you know Funky Winkerbean?
Oh my lord, what did you just say to me?
Funky Winkerbean.
Yeah, I feel like that might be the dirtiest thing said on today's episode. That's saying something.
Funky Winkerbean is just like a slice of life funny comic. And in today's... what?
Is it funny?
What?
Funky
Winkerbean?
You said it's a slice of life funny comic, and I question.
Well, I mean, like the Sunday funnies. It's a newspaper strip. It's a syndicated comic strip that may or may not appear in your newspaper, because turns out we had shitty comics in the Projo. Like, I had Rex Morgan. I would have loved to read Funky Winkerbean or 9 Chickweed Lane. Like, as crazy as they are, they're enjoyable. Rex Morgan, like, I have to cut open this man, but I'm brooding. What will happen to Rex Morgan?
For a while, and that was pretty good.
What one?
We had Bloom County for a while with Opus and Bill the Cat and stuff.
I do love Bloom County. I also, you know what else is really good? Mark Trails. Mark Trails is fantastic. I didn't know I wanted to read three panel like adventures of an outdoorsman. But I don't know what would... Funky Winkerbean. In today's Funky Winkerbean, a guy says that when he found out his wife had cancer, he became Dick Tracy. And then the last panel is an old woman doing the Captain America. I understood that reference. And people lost their shit online because Dick Tracy has appeared in Funky Winkerbean.
Okay.
So, like... You understood that reference to a real person who exists in our world?
Obama. I get it.
I get it. Obama. He was a president. And then other people are like, well, it'd be like saying I became a real J. Edgar Hoover. Like, yeah, but then someone wouldn't say, I got that reference to history.
Yeah, like to the rest of America. I know you all didn't, but I understood that.
But
no,
then, like,
we got it too.
But that talks to the fact that, like, the Sunday funnies, they're just about the joke. They don't really think about their continuity. But the disappointment, if Bazooka Joe and the Archieverse somehow met each other, and I bet they have. I bet we can find that information before the next episode too. Jughead meeting Bazooka Joe is a motherfucking waste. That would just be a waste of time. Because you know who Jughead hangs out with? Mort. Moore is the best character in Bazooka Joe. He's basically Mushmouth, but not Mushmouth. He just has a big sweater that covers most of his face. And
I'm just thinking it must have been like an insert ad, right? Like the
yeah,
same ways in which like the Hulk sells you pies by like
Hulk love Hostess
yeah,
pies. They're the
exactly.
only thing that calm him down.
The only thing that doesn't make Hulk angry
is Hostess cherry pies.
Oh shit.
It's true.
But yeah, so like there must be like a Bazooka Joe
Yeah.
like page, right? And that must be why in my head I have this like art of Bazooka Joe and Jughead hanging out.
Jughead eats hamburgers. He probably doesn't chew gum. Oh man, I feel like we were talking about something before we got to this. Oh, well, Dick Tracy. We're gonna do a time capsule on Dick Tracy. We'll reveal that. Oh, I don't know what we were talking about, where we were going. I was gonna transition into. I'm still gonna transition into it, because it really upset me, and like I didn't know if I was gonna talk about it on the show this week, but like no, it's still in the back of my mind, and I'm still kind of bothered by it. So, Sejim, this pandemic has been a unique situation for television.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's been a unique situation for a lot of things, but television is the one that I can point at and say, oh my God. And it started a year ago. It started a year ago before everybody was stuck inside, before things were like put on hiatus. And it started when Schitt's Creek like swept the Golden Globes.
Right.
And the reason why I say that is in the search of content, when they couldn't make their own shows, when they couldn't be producing This Is Us and New Amsterdam, things like NBC went out and bought up like freshman or like second or sophomore. If I'm going to use one, I should use the other. Freshman or sophomore shows from the Canadian Broadcasting Company.
Right.
And I can point at every major network and say, this is a show that was on the CBC that they just purchased and packaged. Especially like they also did it with like weird streaming shows where they're like, we're going to take this show that's on a streaming service, buy the rights to first air it. Like not even syndication rights, not like BoJack going to Comedy Central, but this is aired one season exclusively to Spectrum, and we're going to pay to air it like it's a Fox show.
Well, that was kind of the Crackle like method was what it was. They started off that kind of on purpose as a streaming service that would give something a chance, but then what they would do is they would sell a show off for second season. I'm thinking specifically of the superhero show that they had that was made from the guys that did Robot Chicken.
I can't think of the name of that one. The Incredibles or not the Incredibles.
No, not the Incredibles. But basically, right, like so they would do a first season of a show with the intention that it would get sold off, and then Crackle just gets to just sit back and just rake it in and not spend any more money on it getting made. And so like they would kind of come in as like the producing house to get the first thing out there, and it was from what I understand a pretty effective method for them. I mean they were able to end up producing some pretty wild shit, like I mean the Snatch TV show and things like that, right? Mm-hmm. But you'll every now and then you'll catch a show on TV or even other streaming services, because I think Amazon ended up coming and buying a couple of things from them. But you'll see like in the credits like the Crackle logo will come up because they technically actually produced the first like 5 episodes or first season or something.
Yeah, they also were big at buying up shows that failed after the first season, like the rights to continue the show. Yeah. And whether they continued it or not, they're then the people you need to license it from if you want to show it on your streaming service. Right. Like, I'd like to raise my glass of water to Crackle briefly for like finding a method that worked in a world of Quibbies and CISOs.
Well, and in a world of Netflixes and Hulus that were trying to figure out ways to make things commercial free, Crackle was just like, nah, we're not going to mess with that. And they went like whole hog into like airtime commercials, like where you can watch the show here, but you have to keep in mind that there's going to be a commercial. And like in a weird way, it gave them a lot more. It gave them a lot more wiggle room in terms of stuff that they could go out there for, because people were much more willing to talk to the guy that was going to give them ad revenue, right? So like they also kind of pioneered that sense with streaming that it didn't have to all be commercial free, and like love it or hate it, like that's a huge part of the streaming like landscape right now, and so they're also at the forefront of that too.
Yeah. I mean, Crackle, I've watched plenty of things on Crackle. I forget Crackle exists, is what I'm going to admit. But
Yeah.
Charlie's Angels, when I got like a bee in my bonnet to rewatch the 2011 Charlie's Angels series.
Yeah.
The first 3 episodes were like just available for free on Amazon, and then I had to watch the remaining 5 on Crackle, and I did it with commercials because I really like that Charlie's Angels. And unapologetically, that's a good show. But what I want to speak to more is like the CW grabbed the show Coroner from the CBC, and that show's insane, right? Like that's such a Canadian show. And you don't need to go any further than the 3rd episode where a woman brings in a gun to the coroner's office. Like they go to question her boyfriend, and then the boyfriend like storms out and she finds a gun in his stuff, and she brings it in like open palms to the coroner's office to be like, I found this gun in our house. If you think that my boyfriend might be responsible for this crime and want to test it. And they treat it like an active shooter situation. Because it's not America where everybody just has a gun.
Oh, man.
I feel like I've talked about this before. It was insane. Like, she had it in a towel, like, open palms. There's no way she's going to shoot anybody with this gun unless she's a mutant. And I mean, like, with telepathy powers, telekinesis, I can activate this gun with my mind. And if she can activate a gun with her mind, it don't matter that she's carrying one in open palms. Sorry, I got it. So, like, these distinctly Canadian series coming forward. The big one that I can think of for Fox was LA's Finest, which was a Spectrum original series. That is why Bad Boys for Life is Bad Boys for Life. Because LA's Finest is the 3rd entry in the Bad Boys canon. It follows Gabrielle Union's sister of Martin Lawrence.
And Jessica Biel, right?
Jessica Alba.
Jessica Alba, that's who the other one is. Right.
They're basically bad girls. And that show was awesome. And like, I'm so happy that I went through the Bad Boys canon to see Bad Boys for Life, because it gave me this deeper appreciation for LA's Finest. Nice. And LA's Finest, as much as Bad Boys for Life is the best Bad Boys movie, just in terms of the first one is a little bit too story heavy, the second one is a little too action heavy, and as it is in Goldilocks, the 3rd one is just right. Nice. LA's Finest, the fact that it's a 10-episode series, has the ability to give you story and action each episode. And like, I feel like that was a real windfall for Fox, being like, we're going to show this. But then Spectrum canceled it after its 2nd season. And I don't know if Fox is going to pay to license out the 2nd season of LA's Finest. And that's disappointing. And then that all comes to a head with the Canadian show that NBC bought to air that started on the 17th of November in 2020. And it just wrapped up this past week. And that's Nurses. Are you familiar with the show Nurses at all?
No, man, not at all. This is such a weird time for television to me, because like it's the fact that this stuff all started at weird parts of the year, all came from weird places, was completely like, there was no build up to it. Like, I didn't hear about in February how Fox was working on this show for to be a Bad Boys spin-off, you know what I mean? Because they weren't at that point.
Yeah, exactly. They just grabbed it and threw it on because they wanted eyeballs.
Yeah.
And that's what NBC did with Nurses. And my father, like, just taped it because he's like, this should be good. And we throw on the first episode, and it's fantastic. The show Nurses is great. It is just really enjoyable television. It follows 5 nurses at the City Memorial Hospital in Toronto. And it's funny because they don't mention that it's Toronto, and because Toronto plays New York so often, like, you think that it's New York for a while until they're like, no, we need to let people know this is Toronto because we don't want them to think it's New York, because we're going to handle things that, like, that's not how this works in America.
Yeah, things like healthcare are actually kind of hugely different between the two. So
Yeah. It's like, it's weird. It's like the third episode that like, it's like, we're in Canada. And I'm like, oh, wow. I hadn't realized. But like now suddenly questions I had make a lot of sense. Like the fact that a guy's like on his way to be euthanized, or like the long-term care department for the guy who's like, I'm going to die and I'm going to go on an ayahuasca trip beforehand. And like the monks who like go to the hospital to help people and guide them towards death in this long-term care department, that like American hospitals don't have things like that, because American hospitals are all about get the fuck out, because that can be more money for us. Like,
and then we make movies like John Q, and then we talk about how like heroic and dark that had to get, but then don't do anything about shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So watching Nurses, especially with this backdrop, has been really interesting, and it's really, really good. Betty's sister from Riverdale is one of the nurses, Teresa
nice.
Scoveby. That's the actress's name. I can't think of her name in Riverdale. And then it's just like, one of them is Don McLean Jr. He plays the character Wolf. I didn't know there was a Don McLean Jr. I don't think he's related to the American Pie guy. I think it's just his name. I feel, but it's just this really good show. And then this week on February 24th, a year after this show first aired in Canada, the specific episode that they were talking about, a huge controversy erupted regarding the 8th episode of Nurses and it being anti-Semitic. They like talking about how you put these actors in Jew face and that's not even a thing. No Jewish people believe what they're talking about. And I kind of got disappointed by that, because it felt like, A, you missed the entire point of this episode, because the point of the episode was religion and people's ways of following it and what faith means is different. Just because two people are Catholic doesn't mean that they worship and believe the same things. The same with Judaica.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, my question is, like, was there someone at least educated in Judaism, like, writing about this, or was this just...
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, but I think what really bothers me about it, so what happens is a young man is struck by a car, and he needs a bone graft in order to repair his leg. Otherwise, it will not heal properly. And they're Orthodox Jew, and the father is very much against him getting that transplant because it would need to come from a non-Jewish person because of Orthodox Judaism beliefs regarding transplants and all these other things. So like the nurses are like, he's going to get a transplant. This is what we're going to do. And the father is vehemently against it because it's not a life or death situation. His son's leg will heal. It just won't heal properly. But like, that's God's plan.
So there is, even in the most orthodox of Jewish houses, there is this idea of like, you are allowed to break the rule if it means, I think the exact wording is save a human life,
right?
Like that is what needs to be on you know, and we were actually literally just laughing about this the other day because some Orthodox Jewish families will have like that story that they get to tell, like the taboo story of that time that they drove on the Sabbath because like they had to get their neighbor to the hospital or something like that. And it's like, and it's part of like the repertoire of like dinner stories that like talking about like that one time you had to break the rule because it is so like, I in a weird way like I can see where that's coming from. It's just I think for me the biggest thing that has to lend credence to it is I'd have to see like what they mean by Jew face or like this Jewish facade that they put on.
Well, the Jewish facade is just the fact that they were Orthodox Jew looking. It's not like they gave them hook noses.
But what does that mean?
Okay, so they had beards and they had the curly sideburns coming down. Yeah, like what you think of when you think of an Orthodox Jewish person. Right. And I'm talking as someone who visits Brooklyn, like.
Yeah, but what that is like that's like somebody putting on like an Indian headdress to some people,
Right. Right.
like
And I understand that.
so.
But it wasn't so much like, because I did a lot of research on this because of what you're just talking about. That save a life like loophole in Judaism is like, it's okay because it's to that. That's a big part of it. Like,
Right.
if his son needed, say, a heart or a kidney, I feel like his father would have been okay with it because it is to save my son's life. The fact that it was a bone graft and like he'll live without this, his leg will heal an inch shorter than it should be. Like there's just, like you just talked about it. You just talked about there are exceptions, and what it comes from is saving a life. So they didn't make it a life or death situation. So like it made it easier for me to swallow the fact that his father, as like a devout Orthodox Jew, would be against the operation. Like, if that makes sense. And also why the son would be okay with it. Like, no, I want to have this. Like, they both quoted that same sort of thing, that the reasons why they
Well,
were.
that's fine, and but like I'm saying, that doesn't seem to be where the problem
No, but
lies.
that is but the problem is everything that talks about it, because I went and I read the original complaint about it, and all the articles reporting on this anti-Semitic episode of Nurses didn't mention the Jew face. It was just the original blog entry on the blog Jew in the City, where he said this felt like a Jew face moment, where they talked as if they didn't even understand the faith. And I'm like, okay, but like, I'm not Jewish. I'm nothing. I'm Polandarian. That's the religion that I write down on forms, because it's the religion I made up in high school so I could wear a hat inside. I feel like I've told that story before. I'm not going to go deeper here, but like, yeah, like I'd rather make up my own religion, which is just have faith in something. That's pretty much how I practice mine. And it's also like, if you watch the rest of the episode, like obviously isolated, I could see that being it. The issue is that the father is more traditional than what the son believes. And then the nurse who's assigned to it, she was raised in a Catholic household and wants to still have Catholic beliefs, but her family threw her out when she came out as a homosexual.
Right.
So like she turned her back on her religion, even though it brought her some comfort. When that was the reason her parents threw her out. Like, there was a much deeper discussion on display about religion and the practice of it. And, like, just seeing that one thing again, I was reminded of the Parents Television Council, when they would be like, this episode of Family Guy was the worst episode of television on this week. And it would be some weird isolated incident that also they might not have fully understood what was going on.
For sure. I mean, anytime somebody comes in and wants to talk about like censoring a thing or ignoring a thing because they don't agree with with what it says, you have to be on your toes, right? You have to make sure that you are looking into it and learning everything you can about it, because it's shaky ground to start on, right? For sure.
I don't know. And I think, but what bothers me is in the past, these type of situations, it really talks to what's going on in the world currently with like the discussion of cancel culture. And that's a much larger discussion that I don't necessarily think I want to get into right here and now without more, information about what that means. But that episode was immediately pulled. The next day, it was no longer available on the streaming sites that NBC had licensed it out to. And, an apology. But then, like, I'm upset because it probably means that Nurses Season 2 is not going to come to America. And,
Maybe.
And then I'm also bothered because this is a thing that existed in the world for a year. And then it even existed for 2 weeks before someone saw it and was like, this is offensive to me. And everything kind of bowed down to it and said, okay, then we'll get rid of it. Like, I'm afraid of what it stands for. It's something that we haven't talked about a lot on this show, but it's like the James Gunn thing, where like 10-year-old tweets come up and then he's canceled for a few weeks and then he's brought back. Like I don't get it. It's something that I'm struggling to understand. And that's why I bring it to you.
One of the other things you got to keep in mind is that with this being a Canadian show, Canada is going through a huge movement right now in terms of questioning its views on racism and things like that. I mean, like the largest example of it is the ways in which they treated Indigenous people, and like they are being taken to task for that, and as they rightly should be. I mean, like we're learning horrific things about like entire towns full of people being just disappeared and things like that. Like just like awful parts of history that are in some ways they are so horrific that like we purposely don't talk about them because they just are unbelievably horrific. And so with Canada in the middle of that entire identity crisis of trying to figure out who they are, I mean, especially because it cannot be easy being America's old like upstairs neighbor, right? Like so you know they are going through that. I mean, they have a prime minister right now that on the one hand is very well beloved for a lot of his progressive moves, but on the other hand has a very torrid history with the ways in which he treated race when he was younger. But on the other hand, he acknowledges it. It's not something that he hides from. It's not like around here where somebody gets called out on it and they act like they're over it because it happened 10 years ago. You know, Justin Trudeau's reaction has always been like, I am still learning, which I think is something that's worth talking about, you know?
Yeah.
It's like there's a context to that when a show that sounds like it is trying its hardest to be progressive and inclusive, when they take a hard swing and they immediately get told that it was a bad one, their first reaction is to go back to the drawing board, as it were, pull it back and keep on trucking. I'd rather see that, and maybe in a while they come up with their own reasons why they stand behind it and they put it back, a la the James Gunn thing, because like, yes, he got taken out of things for a while, taken out of the picture for a while, but cooler heads prevailed in that situation, and once things were talked about and thought about, he was brought back. And I think that's the moral of that story.
Yeah. That's,
you know, it's like right, like it's important, right? Like that when that sort of stuff happens, how people react to it is really the real story. Like in the immediate, like Disney saying we're going to take him off of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is an immediate reaction, and in a lot of ways, like that needs to be talked about too. But at the end of the day, they came back.
Cooler
right?
heads prevailed, and they understood.
And that could be. Yeah, and that could easily be something that happens with this, is that, yeah, maybe this episode doesn't come back, but they get to keep making it. And maybe your fear that a new season's not gonna happen just because of this one controversy. I mean, how many shows every season come up with something controversial and they keep on going? And like it takes a lot for something to get canceled.
So I think I misrepresented why that is a fear of mine, and that's on me, and I apologize for that. A second season has already been started. A second season is already being produced in Canada. Mm-hmm. What my fear is because of this controversy, NBC doesn't license it out to air that second season in America.
Yeah, but that's what I mean is like there's already shows that they're like that dealing with that kind of stuff. That doesn't affect anything. Honestly, I'd be more on board to believe that the controversy drew more eyes to it. I'd be curious to see if viewership went up afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. There's no such thing as bad publicity, but it's just one of these things that I had never considered, like in the wake of this. The pandemic way of like purchasing up, because it's not new to buy Canadian shows and show them in America. Very much that's what summer lineups are. That's why we had shows like Flashpoint and Rookie Blue airing over the summer.
Yeah, anybody that loves Degrassi, like, guess what, guys?
Yeah, exactly. I hope you would know that. They say a lot in Degrassi.
Total Drama Island too. I mean, like there's that's been around for a while.
It happens for a long time, but this is one of those situations where once NBC can be producing shows as regularly as they were pre-COVID-19, like I don't think that they would want to touch something that had a controversy surrounding it. And it's not like it happened mid-season. Like the Tuesday before all this erupted, they aired the season finale of the first season of Nurses. And
Yeah.
in Canada, they've just begun showing, I believe, the second season, or like it'd be one thing if this were Canada's reaction to it, right? Because everything you said about Canada trying to be more progressive and looking into this stuff, I would completely understand if they looked at it and said, you know, in light of new facts, this is what we need to do with this show, right? We need to just be a little bit more discerning with what we allow on our television programs. But it's the American reaction to an international product, and I'm fearful of what that will mean going forward for international products.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I mean, like I cannot imagine half of the shows that are brought over from the BBC that frequently get edited down just to meet our commercial standards, never mind to meet our like our tastes. But like, yeah, I it's something that it's something that's been in the water for a long time, though, you know, that the ways in which shows have had to kind of bend to American sensibilities even when they're not American made.
right. And I don't think that this particular show was one of those.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
ditto like Coroner. I think that because we didn't have that time to discern and find the one that was more American friendly, like,
Yeah.
I imagine if they had had time, NBC probably would have seen this stuff and said, "Ooh, there's an episode about religion. We're not going to purchase this to show on our network."
No, what they would rather do is then in those types of cases pay the creators to produce an American version.
Right. Like, that's what happens often.
Yeah.
Like, that.
Yeah.
That's how it goes. But we don't have that luxury when we're not allowed to shoot films and television because of, you know, safety. So it was just such a unique study that I wanted to touch on it. And you're not wrong, right? Like, I don't know if anybody on the show, I don't know their backgrounds, if they come from some sort of, you know, Jewish upbringing, and this is the story that they're relating. Because, like, I've learned a lot about that, too. I went down a real rabbit hole with this episode of Nurses. I don't know. It's just something that I wanted to bring up. I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah.
It's also, I think one of the other things to consider is that I think that where some of the offense may come from is how stubborn and obstinate the father is being compared to other people in his life. Because one of the other big things about the Jewish religion is the fact that it's always a discussion. Like, it's never a rule, like, right? Like, and so that, you know, and that tends to not necessarily be the case so much with when you get into the idea of orthodoxy, just like in any religion. But that idea that it seems like it is it in a lot of ways it's the same ways that you would see like a Jehovah's Witness treated in an American television show, right? Or like that idea that there's always the Amish episode. Every medical show has that one episode that's always like that. I think that's part of the thing that's so surprising to me is that as much as they may be having these really interesting progressive conversations, the concept of the religious parent, you know, not wanting to treat the child, I think ER had an episode of that. I think General Hospital
Family
had
Guy has an episode of that.
Right.
Like, Christian Scientists exists, and that's the whole tenet of their religion is everything is God's will.
Right.
So we can't do something with our technology that would go against the will of God. Right. And there's so many episodes that are about that. So it just felt so strange that, like, this is the hill that we're going to fight on.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really like the show. And I understand that, like, that's part of where I'm coming at is I don't want this show that has really surprised me with the storytelling. I don't like medical shows. I will just be honest with you. I was a little squeamish growing up, and that converted to me not really watching medical shows until I was much older. Like, and then I watched things like Night Shift and this and Scrubs, right? Let's give Scrubs. This is the first time and maybe the only time that you'll hear me give credit to Scrubs for, like, normalizing a show set on like the backdrop of a hospital for me.
Yeah, for a lot of people, man.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it was one of the biggest shows of its time, right. and remains one of the most medically sound television shows ever produced.
Yeah. But, like, I couldn't watch ER. My parents watched ER every week, and I tried, and I threw up. Like, so the fact that I found a show that, like, they're interesting stories being told in hospitals. It explores a world that I don't have a lot of knowledge about, and it drives me to want to learn more about like the medical industry and what goes on there. And then like it stinks that like it gets stifled because of this. Where, like you said, we could probably look at every single medical show and find the religious objection episode.
Right.
Right? Like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the guys who cultivate that list. I'm fine with Adam Sandler movies and comic book adaptations and Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
I know this is a show about everything, but, like, that's not something that sparks joy.
Yeah. It's just the other side of that, though, is that, like, the fact that every other show has that episode does not give them carte blanche.
It doesn't give you carte blanche to do it. Right. That's true.
So I agree. Somebody has to get called out eventually, right? Because there is a tinge of something in those episodes that you could definitely lean on, like a cynicism towards a person's beliefs that is maybe not necessarily cool in every context. And it all depends on how it's handled. Like all good art, it is controversial, but it's about how it's handled that matters, whether or not it's upsetting, right? And again, I haven't seen it, so I can't tell you what they do that may be seen one way or the other. But somebody coming out and saying that something upsets me, that person shouldn't just be written off, And like we were saying with other stuff, I mean, like not just James Gunn, but like the same thing kind of happened to Dan Harmon, right? And we all know that like Rick and Morty is going to be around forever, but there was a moment where people were like, there's some things that we got to address about the ways in which Harmon works with people. And even he came out and said, I was not aware this was the kind of person I was being. And and it's all about how you react in those moments, right? And so we have all of these examples of people that people like to point to as getting like canceled because of this and that. Everybody talks about Roseanne, everybody talks about Tim Allen, all that stuff. But like, we also have examples of people getting called out and like being cool about it. I mean, like I think of the guy that we talked about that created Riverdale. Keep coming back to this, but at some point, the actress that plays Josie from Josie and the Pussycats, like, kind of laid it out on Twitter that like her show keeps getting called progressive, but she'd like to point out the fact that like she is one woman of color on that entire show, and she spends most of it like running around going after Archie. Like she wouldn't, and she also probably doesn't get as much screen time or pay as anybody else there. Like there's still something to be said. And the creator of that show, the first thing he did was get on Twitter and support her and say like, mention like you saying these things you're not incorrect, and they are things that we need to address, and we will try to do better. And it's why you don't hear about the end of Riverdale, despite the fact that this huge thing happened over the summer where like all of the stuff came out about like, people being pissed about the ways that like people were portrayed in that show.
Yeah,
there are good examples.
Yeah, there are layers. I think, right, and this is another Origins of Dev moment. I'll do that. Religion is a touchy subject for me, but not for that same reason that it's a touchy subject for other people, or like something that you don't talk about. At a time in my life when I was 18, some friends found God, and wanting to be supportive, of all of our group of friends, was the only one who agreed to go to their church with them. Because, I don't know, this is weird. I don't know how many other people have this experience where, like, a friend finds God and then they want to share it with everybody. I mean, it's with everything, right? I just found Star Trek. Let's watch Star Trek, right? Like, it's a big thing that happens in life.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to sound insane or foolish with this, but it's but it's why this specifically spoke to me in a weird way, I think, and I want to share that, and I want to see if I can normalize it for myself. So sorry to use you as the sounding block for that, CJ.
I don't know,
but
I mean, but yeah, you're not wrong. Like the personal discovery, the personal growth thing. For some people, it's, hey, I just realized I like musical theater. For other people, it's like, hey, I just figured out that I might be Jewish. Yeah,
right, exactly. And that's one of those situations. And the whole friend group was like not supportive of this person being like, I want to go to church and I want to do this. Would you be willing to come to a Bible study and see what I'm getting involved in? And, at the time, like, I cared about my friends, and I still care about friends. It's that I have less friends to care about, I think. is what it comes down to. Where like I wonder if I would do those same things now, but I would. I think that I would. I think that it's just a matter of I'm not meeting new people who are bringing new experiences to me. But if you're like opposed to new experiences, life is kind of boring. Like I was all about going to a Bible study and seeing what it was all about. And then realizing, no, this really isn't for me. And for like a myriad of reasons. But what it did inspire in me is seeing a room of, 40 people close to my age, like 18 to 27-year-olds who are getting together every Thursday to discuss the Bible and what religion can mean to older people. Because as far as I was concerned, religion was the thing that you did when you were younger, and then you kind of grew out of it. And that's because of my own personal experience with it, where I went through communion, and then religion just stopped in my life.
Yeah.
Like that was the goal. And once I passed that line,
it was something that your parents told you that you did until you realized you didn't have to listen to your parents anymore.
Right. Actually, I think, and this is even going further, it's something that my grandparents told my parents that I had to do.
Mm.
And, you're still young, so my parents wanting to, make their parents happy, it all makes sense in a way, right? Like, and even then, communion to me was, if you do this thing, you'll have a party and you'll get gifts.
Right.
Like, that was the incentive that my parents used to get me through communion. But, like, it's not like religion was something that was strange to me. And being like, come to this Bible study, I'm like, yeah, sure, I'll come to Bible study. Whatever. I mean, I've told other stories about my experiences with the church. Something about prophets and words written on my forehead. X-Men 3. But going there and seeing that, it made me realize that religion is something that's still going to exist in your life, Devon. Even though it's something that you don't really need in order to feel fulfilled, it is something that means a lot to other people. And rather than get caught with my pants down, after going to that Bible study, I learned about basically every religion in the world. I did my research. I read many books. I read the Bible. I read the Quran, because I wanted to know what the beliefs were so that I could understand them and respect them. And these type of things, these discussions about religion and a religious thing happening, and the immediate reaction being like, we're not going to show that anymore, right? I feel like it stops that potential seeking of knowledge if you just make the entire topic taboo.
Yeah, I mean, and
sorry,
the idea the idea that like spurring conversation is something that people, artists, politicians, there's always this conversation that needs to be had within the self of like, am I doing this because I agree with it, or am I doing this because I want to start this conversation with people, right? There's tons of movies out there, plays, songs like that you can point to of people saying one thing but not meaning it, right? And it's this constant conversation though of like, what do you mean by not meaning it though? Because that idea that you watch a movie like American History X, right? And this is an extreme example of just the most horrible racism on screen. But there is such a clear purpose behind it of like, this is actual, like, this is what people in this world believe, and like this is like the root of it, this is the exploration of it, these are the possible like destinations for it, like, and you can't not talk about that, right? So does a movie like that not want to exist? And this is when you get into these really weird conversations of just like what is age appropriate, what is societally appropriate to talk about, when is it okay, what is the context in which you can view this or take this in, like, right? And it becomes just a web of just constantly having to navigate like the ins and outs of what you assume are other people's comfort levels, but you don't even know that for sure. It's not fair to shut off the conversation completely. We know that much, right? But what do we do instead? And that's not an easy question to answer.
Well, I think that like you hit the nail on the head, because honestly, I wish that there was a way for you to view this one episode of this show and then we could have a discussion about what happens in it. I'd really like to hear your interpretation of that scene.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it not available
But
like through the what is it? CBC?
CBC? I mean, it'd be difficult to find it. I think it might be for sale on Amazon, but like that was the same day that they announced they were getting rid of it. Mm-hmm. So I don't even know if like where the extent of erasure goes. Because that's one of these things where like this episode is deemed inappropriate, so we're taking it off of streaming, but you should still be able to get it on like a DVD set. But then like as DVD sets are reissued, they kind of just hew in line with that same situation. I think about, and this is very, very removed from it, the episode of Sliders where they slide into a matriarchal society. And that was on the DVDs, but then once that was licensed out for streaming, that was just omitted. They're like, we're not including this in packages. We don't want to show this episode. And now that it's back on Peacock, it's back. And I'm just like, I don't know, because no one's talking about this episode of Sliders.
Yeah.
From the 90s.
Yeah, well, I think another thing that's happened recently with this that's interesting is the Muppet Show being put up on Disney, and a certain sect of people, I don't even know if it's a large one, being like weirdly upset that they've decided to put a warning in front of episodes of it, that there are things within episodes that like Disney doesn't necessarily stand by or agree with, but they feel it's important that they put the entire thing out there. Same thing that we talked about many moons ago with talking about the Looney Tunes cartoons being put up on HBO Max and them having the warnings in front of them, right? Or at the same time, when they pulled Gone with the Wind, people lost their crap because they were like, censorship. And then it was back a day later, it just had a new thing up in front of it. They needed to pull it for that day so that they could get the warning put in front of it. But it was back, and there, as I said, there is a small sect of people that even feel that's going too far. And I don't agree with that at all. I think that is a really nice balance for these businesses to come to, of like, look, we're going to put the product out there because this is the product people want, but we're going to cover our asses by saying like, look, there's some shit in this. And I don't know if y'all know, but like sometimes the Muppets said some things.
The Muppets were, I mean, Jim Henson was a very politically minded individual.
Yeah.
He was going to use his marionette puppets to share to share his ideals.
The very, very, very first episode 1-1, is
Mark Hamill, right?
Is no Rita Moreno.
Oh, okay.
And like Rita Moreno, a very controversial but like progressive, powerful figure when it came to both women and Latin American women, like getting new, better like positions in the world, not just Hollywood. But like in it, there is a sketch in which she puts on an accent, which she was known to do from time to time. And so like she puts on an accent, and it is commented on quite frequently in the sketch. It's a little eye-opening. Like you're watching it and you're just like, oh my, okay. And like knowing what I know about Rita Moreno, I know that it is a bit, and that she's actually using it as a way to like talk about and draw attention to all of these people, all of these characters that she's been forced to play in the past, like in order to like have a career and like survive in this world after getting here. Like she had to pretend to be, you know, Native American. She had to pretend to be Asian in The King and I, right? And like she had to be, so like it's actually really interesting watching this Muppet sketch in which she is over exaggerating that aspect of her career, and it's being commented on because at some point Miss Piggy says something to her about it. And so like it's an over exaggeration and a comment on something that she had been doing for decades. But I know that anybody else that doesn't, that puts the Muppet Show on because it's the Muppets, and this is in the first episode, it's gonna concern some people. So they put a thing in front of it saying, look, there's gonna be some shit, like this is what it is. And I think that that's really intelligent, really smart business moves.
Yeah, I've always been share the product, share the information, but inform people beforehand that this is of a time.
Right.
And because it's of a time, I mean, that's if there's a central tenet of this show, or at least what I've presented on this show, that's where I come from. Is I don't think we should erase anything from our cultural experiences, because erasing something means that we can't learn from it. And I think that's why this really stuck with me. And I don't know, like it inspired a conversation with myself about what this means and what it means to like have people saying and doing things on television. And like, it was good. I felt like I had some real personal growth about what things are being done on television. And like me seeing that with my litany of knowledge about religious beliefs and how things are interpreted, and that faith is really person by person, despite the fact that you are all under the same tent. Like, I understood it on a different level, and it felt good to get into like the grit of it and understand how other people did it. But at this point, I can't share it with people like you who I'd want to share it with, so that I can hear your interpretation of that, because it's just gone. And I don't want it to have like ramifications going forward. Yeah. And I'm just like, oh, no more Canadian shows are going to be purchased and shown on NBC because of the bad publicity here.
I don't.
And I know that's a hyperbolic, happen, like, but it's just like that fear that came into my mind. But the other 9 episodes are still available, so I don't know. I think that's everything I have on that one. Is there anything else that you would like to talk about? Thank you for letting me get that out, Sejohn. I appreciate it.
No worries.
I didn't realize how much it was weighing on me until I'm like, what did I do this week? And it was mostly researching Orthodox Judaism and how it was portrayed on this show, and what I'll talk about after, if you have anything else to add.
No, man, I am always happy to talk to you about this sort of stuff. I mean, like, this is my bread and butter. I mean, like, I don't want this kind of stuff to ever get truly forgotten, and you know, we're not in any position at NBC to make sure that like they buy
Imagine if we
2,
were.
But like, we can talk about it. We can talk about what they did, right?
Imagine if the secret reveal in like 215th episode of the Say Report is that Sejohn is the president of NBC programming. You're not, right? Like I'm not gonna get undercover bossed right now.
No, everybody thought it was Les Moonves, but he was just a front, an asshole, apparently.
Well, that's CBS. Not. Did I say CBS? I'm at NBC.
I thought Les Moonves was NBC.
No, Les Moonves was CBS.
They talk about him in 30 Rock. They do a whole bunch of Les Moonves owns the company stuff, but okay.
Maybe he moved over. Les Moonves, when we found out the truth of him, he was with CBS. But like, if there's anything that I've learned about television, it's that you're constantly moving to whatever is going to give you the best deal. I'll have to look into it. I don't know. I never watched 30 Rock.
But there's an entire character down there that's supposed to be him, and so I thought they were making fun of that of NBC. But if they were going after CBS, it was a hard swing.
I mean, that was the time to go after CBS. Let's be honest. Because CBS was the critical darling with How I Met Your Mother. Everybody was chasing How I Met Your Mother at the time. So if you want to mock somebody, you mocked CBS. You swing up. You try to swing up. You don't swing down, because that makes you a bully. And that's it. So the other thing I want to talk about, and this is going to be quick, because the game's been out for a month now, and we've dedicated so much time to it on this show, that the 36 hours I've dedicated to it just on PC feels kind of crazy when ratioed against the Say Report. Yeah. But Cyber Shadow, right? Maybe the second to last time I discussed Cyber Shadow on the Say Report for, let's say, 6 months. Right? I feel like that's a fair investment time. I'm going to talk about it this episode and next episode, because I am competing in a tournament, much like the Link to the Past randomizer days. I have signed up for a tournament to speedrun Cyber Shadow, the game that, 4 or 5 episodes ago, I'm like, it kind of missed the mark. And now I appreciate on a very deep and kind of disturbing level.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's been very interesting listening to you going on this journey with this game because, in a lot of ways, I, it makes me really applaud the developer because this is exactly, I think, the kind of journey that they wanted from a lot of people. Not necessarily being so down on it in the beginning, but the unexpected like hook and being with it. It is a game made with that kind of lifestyle in mind.
Right. I mean, I think the reason I was down on it is that I had built it up in my mind to be something else. And then when it didn't meet those expectations, as we've talked about on the show before, tempering expectations and not having expectations is the easiest way to have an enjoyable life. I was down on it because it didn't fit into the box I wanted it to be in. But then playing it again, I'm like, no, it's its own box, and this box is awesome. And as I've cleared it 25 times now, which considering the first time I cleared it, I'm like, I'm never gonna play you again, Cyber Shadow. That says something about it. And I brought my clear time to 87 minutes. Like,
wow, man. That is a significant drop.
Yeah, considering my first run through of the game was 9 hours, and I had to take a nap near the end because I was so frustrated. I had to have a bottle of milk and just sleep. Really, the toddler response to Cyber Shadow. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to do this tournament. And as long as I don't finish last, I'll be happy. Because it's a one night only tournament. It takes place on Saturday, and it's going to be 2 groups of 10 running the game, and the top 2 finishers of each group of 10 go on to a semifinal, and then they go on to a final. So I really love how it's being run. We talk a lot about how tournaments have run in the past, and just like not being super into what's going on, but this seems like a nice, clean way to run a tournament. Am I wrong there? Or?
No. I mean, again, considering some of the other conversations you've had about tournaments and stuff in the past, like this is all very pleasing to me to hear that like things are coming together so well for this game.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, and the game's been out for a month, so the fact that something is happening now, I get it. You're trying to catch it while it's still relevant in the zeitgeist, but yeah, it's one of those like it's a round robin. It's 2 round robins and then 2 more rounds. Like it makes sense to me. And I'm happy about that. It's not like my first Link to the Past tournament started in March and went all the way until September of that year. Like, that was a lot of Link to the Past.
In retrospect, I spent a lot of time on that game.
Yeah. But Cyber Shadow, in order to prepare for this, I did a week of runs, and
nice.
You know, I got consistent and good, so I'm excited about that. So it's something that I'm excited about, and I'm probably going to talk about a little bit more next week. So, and that's it. And then I will take a break from Cyber Shadow, and I'm looking forward to that break from Cyber Shadow because there are so many other games that I want to play, both new and old.
Yeah.
Like Horizon Zero Dawn, should probably finish that game. Since the sequel's coming out at some point this year, hopefully.
I have the greatest hits version of that game sitting wrapped in plastic by my PS4 upstairs, and it has been sitting there for months.
Yeah.
I should just play it.
Well, we can do it together. I also need to finish The Medium on Xbox Series X.
Oh, God, man. Yeah, man, because we got to talk about
I'd like to talk about what happens in that, but it's just been like, Cyber Shadow is the only game that I play and care about right now. Like, weird upgrades to my computer so that it runs better. There's been a scene, man, and we'll explore it deeper next week after the tournament has finished up. But do you have anything else to go, or should we send this one over to Australia to wrap it up in a bow?
Yeah,
that rhymed.
This one up.
All right. So if you would like to hear anything more about the tournament, get some more information, you can find me on Twitter at Devon D. Decker.
And if you want to explain to me anything about Les Moonves, because I'm convinced he's not a real human anymore, you can catch me at Siege versus the World.
I'll admit that I was probably wrong. I think I'm thinking of somebody else.
I was probably wrong, so we were both probably wrong.
I think there are just too many Les's in television. And that's just the fact that we're going to have to come to grips with during this season of the Say Report. But for now, Will, let's bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devon Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.